Welcome to Elma Wine and Liquor's YouTube channel. I'm Tim. Today we are discussing the topic of can bourbon be flavored? So we get a lot of flavored whiskey products, flavored bourbon products in the store, people asking for them, looking for them. Fireball, peanut butter whiskey, Screwball, all those types of things that have been very popular lately. And sometimes people ask, well, can it be called bourbon if it's flavored? The short answer is nope, cannot be called bourbon if there's added flavoring. So back it up a step. What is exactly a bourbon? Just a regular old bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. It has to be aged in new American oak barrels, and it has to be made in the United States. There are some more intricacies in how long it's aged and what other words can be on the label, but those are what can be called a bourbon. You cannot add any flavor or sugar, any artificial sweeteners, anything to the whiskey, to the bourbon, and still call it a bourbon. So you'll see products like this Evan Williams Peach, which says Kentucky Straight Bourbon, blended with peach liqueur, or this Wild Turkey American Honey Sting. Same kind of thing. It becomes a liqueur blended with bourbon, not a bourbon. So fine difference, little nuance in the language there. They could still use the word bourbon in there because they started with bourbon and then they added in different flavorings to the bourbon. But it is no longer pure, truly a bourbon. An interesting side note is that even though these kind of took off in popularity, I saw a stat the other day that Evan Williams products, their flavored products, are the only category in their whiskey portfolio that's actually declining in sales year over year this year. So people are really appreciating that more traditional bourbon. Now, can you get additional flavors into a bourbon and still call it a bourbon? Yes, you can. So products like this Noble Oak, which is a double oak finished in sherry casks, is one way that bourbon producers can impart some additional flavor or some different flavors on the bourbon and still classify it as a bourbon whiskey. This is Savage and Cook. They like to finish their whiskeys in wine barrels because the company was started by a winemaker. And then most notably Maker's Mark, which is one of the first that I'm aware of to really start with these finishing staves. So they came up with extra staves that they would throw in the barrel of whiskey near the end of its aging process to impart some different flavors. They started with their Maker's 46, and now they have a very elaborate program where they allow us to go down there and pick our own staves to impart our finishing flavors. Other producers they start with the American oak. They age the bourbon for however long they want in that new American oak barrel, and then they'll take that barrel and they'll dump it into another barrel. Those barrels can be made with Mizunara from Japan, or Amburana from Brazil, or just used sherry casks, or French oak, used wine barrels, all different stuff, which gives the whiskey, gives the bourbon a little bit of a different flavor, different body, different texture, but still allows that producer to call it bourbon legally. It's a very fun industry in that regard. There's a lot of different products coming out, a lot of experimental stuff. Some of them great, some of them not so great, but definitely worth checking out and paying attention to what's written on the label, especially when you're getting into the more nuanced flavors of adding liqueur, becoming a liqueur, versus the fun finishes that the different types of wood and used wood can impart on the whiskey. And it's truly amazing. If you ever see an Amburana finished whiskey, just imparts a whole ton of baking spice, cinnamon, all these types of things naturally, just from the wood, not from any added spices or anything like that. So, can bourbon be flavored? No. Can whiskey makers come up with a way to impart some additional extra flavor that's not in the mash bill and not in the original American oak? Yes, they can. That's it. Quick summary. Hope you found this helpful. If you enjoyed this video, really appreciate you liking, subscribing, and sharing this with a friend. Let us know in the comments what you thought. Cheers.